Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at how you can create interactive elements on the front of your containers to allow you to communicate with what's going on inside the container. So when we finished the last tutorial, we just made this container which is taking the input and adding 4 to it and sending that to the output. So if we go inside that container, here we can see the variable that's being used, that's being summed with the input and sent to the output. So now what we could do is, if we wanted to view this on the front of the container so that we could change it from the outside, all we need to do is click on this show on parent button, and that will now become visible on the front of the container. So if we go back to the level above, which we can do by clicking on the thumb of the canvas above, you can see now that the container that we created has a text box on the front called single figure with the 4 in it. So we could now change this to 10, for example, and we can see now the 10 that's being input is now being added to 10, and that is being sent to the output, which is giving us 20. If I go back inside the container, it's the show on parent button there that allows you to send interactive elements through to the front of the container. So that's available for text entries. It's also available on the switches, and it's available on the graphs. So for example, if we wanted to choose whether we added 10 or 20, for example, to the input, what we could do is get a switch component, and let's remove that link there, plug the switch into the sum. I'm just going to copy this so we're getting a new one. So let's say we've got 10 and 20. We don't want either of these to show on the parent anymore. I'll plug the 10 and the 20 into the switch, and let's just call this variable 1. We'll call this variable 2. So now we can see on the switch we've got variable 1 or variable 2, which will be used to sum the input. So if we decide to show this on the front of the container, let's call this option, for example, and tell it to show on the front. So now if we go to the top of that container, we can see we have a switch here called option. At the moment it's set to variable 2, so the 10 is having 20 added to it, which is being sent to the output. But if we change to variable 1, it's now only having 10 added to it, so the output now is 20 instead of 30. So that shows you how the interactive elements work. Basically just tell the component that has the interactive element on it to be shown on the parent, and it'll be visible. The components or the interactive elements are shown on the front of containers in the order in which they are selected to be visible inside the container, so you can reorder things by deselecting them and reselecting them as you need to. You can see here that this container also has a show on parent module button as well, which means that if this container was to be located inside another container, then we could also choose to show the interactive elements that are on it on the front of a container that it's inside as well. So to kind of show you a better example of where this kind of thing might be used, if I take the point source radiation loss that I used in the general introduction, you can see here that we've got a radiation correction here, and it's set to spherical at the moment. If we look at what's going on inside that container, this is the inside of the radiation loss. So what you can see here is that this is the switch that's being shown on the front, and it's just choosing whether it's 1, 2 or 4 that is divided by pi by 4 there before it goes on to be 10 volt and added in with the input. So that gives you a more kind of useful example of where the switch might be used, so that you can just select your type and it will change the equation on the inside accordingly. So that's the interactive elements on the containers. What you might also have noticed is that this is called point source radiation loss and not new container like the other ones have been so far. The reason for this is that inside the container we've got a info component that is labelled with the name that we want it to have. So their point source radiation loss is the label of that component, so that's what's used on the front of the container. And we also have some information there about what this container does, so that someone looking at the container from the front can just go over the info thing there, and then it'll explain to them what that container does. The info component is just located inside your toolbox. So if ever you make a container, you can just drag the info component into it, label it with what you want the container to be called, put some information in the info box, and then that'll be shown under the info component in the container. So that's about it. The next tutorial will look at validating and saving containers to toolboxes.